Well, the second testicle has landed in the Raiders coaching fiasco. They just fired Tom Telesco, the general manager of the general managing partner. How does that work? It hasn't been the same since Al Davis was around. Of course, Al was known for his crazy moves, and his son has tried to follow in his footsteps. And I think he's going to try an extremely crazy move. Because in his sugar bowl haircut lifestyle, where he doesn't have to worry about promoting a team as far as getting fans in the stadium, they're in a tourist town that's completely based on vice. And ironically, he takes no advice except from people who could best be described as some of the people in the movie The Jerk. Yes, Mark Davis is like in the movie The Jerk. He's being approached by people looking for donations to help prevent cat juggling and other things. And maybe he did invent the OptiGrab. I don't know. Maybe he invented the, instead of the Flowbee, the Bowlbee. A bowl cutting system that uses a vacuum cleaner. Mark Davis invented that. You didn't know that. You probably didn't know that until I just told you. Mostly because I just thought it up. Mark Davis, inventor of the Bowlbee, surrounds himself over and over by people who tell him tales of how things can be. He never once sees things for how they are. The reality is football is pretty fake. I mean, it is pretty much as fake as the Madden video game. And if you've been watching football, you should know this. It has become increasingly fake. And more than ever, people come out in, with the advent of video and quick video editing, they instantly complain about every call in a game. And some of those people are very mentally ill as far as they take things very literally. They're very young, you can tell. But the fact is, on any given play, the referees can change things quite dramatically. I know what you're thinking. Oh, on Madden, I can score a 99-yard touchdown easily every time. It doesn't work that way with football, where you move a team back 30 feet. Think about that. A 10-yard penalty is 30 feet. A 15-yard penalty, 45 feet. Right? You move them back that far. And there's a reason why they time these defensive ends in different ways in their bend and all this crap, because there's only a certain amount of time to get to the quarterback, and there's only a certain amount of time for a wide receiver to get to the first down marker. And the thing is, there isn't enough time. Oftentimes you see, and fans usually complain about it, is they'll throw the ball short every time. There's all this. Used to be, if you were way behind the sticks, as it were, you would be throwing deep on third down. You would not be dumping it off and then, leaving it up to your defense. You probably wouldn't run it. You might draw it, but you can just try to get some of the yards back and be safe. Of course, back then, they didn't favor wide receivers and give them special privileges and protections the way they do nowadays. But Mark Davis, mark my words, is about to take advice from Tom Brady, who is Tom Brady? I mean, what qualifications does he have to be a GM? Because that's how he's operating right now. He has absolutely no qualifications. And the fact that they fired the general manager means they want to bring someone in who they believe is only going to accept things if he has full say. Oh, don't rule out that he brings in the first female head coach. That should go over well. Now, there have been various names thrown out there, like Bill Belichick. Okay, Bill Belichick was the finalist in 1998, but Al Davis decided he didn't want a disciplinarian. And so he hired John Gruden. Bill Belichick is currently the head coach of the North Carolina college football team. And Mike Lombardi, who used to work for the Raiders, has reiterated earlier today on the Pat McAfee show that they are both committed to North Carolina. And they have no intention of coming to the NFL. Well, is that true? But that's not what I think the crazy move would be. I don't think that move would work because they just got over Josh McDaniels, who is he is a chip off the Belichick block. So if the Raider players didn't accept McDaniels, they're not going to accept Belichick. Even though he comes with like all these Super Bowl rings and he could walk in there wearing his rings, they don't care about that. There's players on the Raiders, I think, that have rings. Or they have been over the years of other teams. I mean, so that doesn't matter. Is he really going to be able to connect with these people? Maybe he does in some ways, but I do not think that's the crazy move. Is the crazy move because they're interviewing Ben Johnson tomorrow? Who is Ben Johnson? And people they think, oh, the Lions look so good. It must be Ben Johnson. Maybe it's the whole resurgence of the Lions. Didn't a couple of years ago, many years ago, I guess, they didn't get up to the podium in time during the draft when I think it was Matt Millen era. The Lions went out and got traded. I think they traded for Goff. He was once the number 1 overall pick. And I believe at the time he was the consensus best quarterback in the draft that year. I think it was 2016. And he had an up and down career with the Rams, who selected him. And he was traded. The first year was not good at all. But the next year, it got better. And I would say it got better because they improved their team. They started drafting better. They got the defensive end, what's his name, Hutchinson or something. They built a better team, I think. Now people are saying like, oh, Ben Johnson was promoted and then this is why they took off. You could say that, but Ben Johnson, I mean, Jared Goff, you can tell when you watch him, he's an elite quarterback in this league. He makes elite throws. When you look at these draftees coming out this year, none of them make throws like him. In fact, some of them remind me of some NFL quarterbacks or like the love child of them, where they will fail. They're not elite quarterbacks. They'll run around and wait for something to happen and throw the ball up for grabs. They will make many like great plays. They'll be let out on stretches many times, and they will throw a lot of interceptions because they'll have to take severe chances because they just don't have arm talent or even brains. You know they don't have brains. You just watch them. I mean, listen to them. The fact that, some of them wear jewelry, a lot of women's jewelry. And going back to Ben Johnson, who would he want? Would he want to be drafting one of these quarterbacks? The Detroit Lions didn't draft a quarterback. They got one off the scrap heap, basically. Someone who's the Rams were giving up on, a former number 1 pick. They took him to the Super Bowl. And who is out there? Is it Darnold of Minnesota? But why would Minnesota want to give up him? And why would you want to, like some of the things being suggested out there, the Raiders would try to trade for some of these players? Or they go for Kirk Cousins. Or some of these other quarterbacks, these Justin Fields, Trey Lance, some of these players that are on teams with quarterbacks who get concussions, like the Patriots. They want Joe Milton the third. And he played very well against backups the last game. I watched it. But that was against backups. Now, and the thing is, maybe the Patriots should have started their backups for that particular game because, they're backups of backups because they won the game against Buffalo and they dropped from number 1 to number 4. But you could make the argument for Donald that they would try to go for him. But what's going to happen with them? What's going to happen with Minnesota? Are they going to lose? They're going to win it all? They're going to franchise tag him. And if you were him, why would you leave a nice quiet situation in Minnesota and come to the Raiders and have to deal with a Sugar Bowl cut owner, all this other nonsense that's, I guarantee if you watch in the building, it sounds like, they probably sound like, door-to-door salesmen, if you ever been around them. Like a group of them. I have. And it's insane. I don't even understand it. It's like a cult. Jehovah's Witness. Mormons. So you could think that guy, but who else? Now, some people are throwing names out there, and I just don't think they mean anything. These quarterbacks that are on Detroit's roster that Ben Johnson would bring over to the Raiders, I don't know how that works. And I don't know how he works. Just because you had a success as an offensive coordinator doesn't mean you're going to be able to coach a team. Antonio Pierce had success as a linebacker coach, I guess. And that doesn't mean he could coach a team, and it was obvious he couldn't. So, who else is out there? Now you see some of the other names being, thrown around. And they involve, what's his name? The one that was on Green Bay, Brian Salazar, the one that got fired. And people are claiming now that, Rodgers didn't want him fired. Oh, and the Raiders will take on Rodgers. They'll trade for him or something. I'm not going to look it up right now, but you go look up Rodgers' salary or cap or whatever, and, they're just going to cut him. They're going to cut him and pay for his salary. It's going to be one of those situations like, the Russell Wilson thing. Yeah, how's that work? I mean, that might encourage teams because Denver did it, and they are in the playoffs with a rookie quarterback. But, their eyes were all set on, Jaden Daniels. Yeah, that would have worked out real well. They never looked at too many other quarterbacks. And they took the advice of fans and players and hired Pierce. But now they're going to hire someone else. And there were a couple other names out there. The coordinator on Detroit that I don't know his name. That would be another monumental failure. That would be Antonio Pierce 2.0. Has no credibility at all. When the Raiders signed John Gruden in 1998, he had a rather extensive history going back to the 49ers. The 49ers, Green Bay, and the Eagles. I would not hire someone and give up that much power to someone who has, no experience. They didn't give Gruden that. Of course, Al Davis was he was the head coach. He was the head owner. So he didn't get any power. He had to fight Al Davis. So who out there would they? Mike Vrabel? That would be Antonio Pierce 2.0 too. And it's another Patriot way coaching candidate. It did not work with McDaniels. I guarantee McDaniels knows more about running an offense than Mike Vrabel. Oh, Mike Vrabel, he can run the defense. Can he? You looked at the Raiders roster? No. The person they're going to probably try to target and bring in after they've gone through and done their Rooney Rule and all that crap is probably Deion Sanders, who is completely unqualified. The only other person out there is John Gruden. And some people think that he's hands off. You can't approach him right now. someone else has to touch him first. Someone else has got to reach out and interview him first. Or the NFL would just go after the Raiders hard. Well, I would prefer Gruden coming back, but he can talk all he wants about, like, quarterbacks, young quarterbacks. He's never developed one. He, I think, prefers an experienced quarterback. There are no experienced quarterbacks coming out, and they lack a lot of first round ability if you're talking about selecting someone number 6 or trading up worse, much worse. That's an Al Davis move. Might have worked in the 70s. Trading up, get some player. But that will be a monumental failure to bring in Deion Sanders and then trade the farm, probably trade Max Crosby to Tennessee or Cleveland. I am not kidding. That is exactly what they would do. Just so they could bring in Shedeur. Imagine naming your kid Shedeur. Anytime you hear someone with a French name, you avoid them. He wears a $50,000 diamond-studded woman's necklace when he plays. I completely forgot his last college game or whatever to do a little online trolling and suggest that some billionaire is offering $1 million for anyone who rips his chain off and throws it into the crowd. I mean, the Raiders don't have to sell tickets. They're always selling tickets. So why would you bring someone like that in? And his father. His father, Colonel Sanders, Colorado, Buffaloes. Colonel Sanders, who sells fried chicken. Who, as a player, played soft. He was just a cover corner. He would not tackle running backs. And that's who you want to bring in. So he can decide who your roster is and where is his resume on doing this. He doesn't have a resume. He has absolutely nothing. His Colorado team played no one who was ranked in college football until they played BYU. And then they got stomped by a bunch of Mormons. Because he is not qualified. But the Raiders appear to be looking to do something. Something dramatic. And I think it would be very bad if they go that route. The only other routes are they going to try to get Aaron Rodgers and pair him up with, I don't know, name someone. Ben Johnson. But if you're giving up that much, power, I have to think it's someone other than Ben Johnson. Maybe Belichick is lying. And that will be a failure too, I believe. I do not believe that football players can be disciplined around the Raiders. The organization is bad. Their front office is bad. They have a bad organization, and it just encourages players to rebel against anything they deem to be domineering. And they've done this before. This has happened before. Raider fans, some of them, they just don't seem to know the history. This happened when the Shanahan was head coach. Shanahan was a disciplinarian. I believe he came off of the 49er coaching tree. But he was a disciplinarian. And he lasted like, I don't know if it was a year and 5 games or 5 games. But he got fired early on in the season. This has just never happened at the time with the Raiders. Got replaced by Art Shell, which was the original Antonio Pierce hiring. Well, Art Shell had been, a offensive line coach with the Raiders for a lot of years. Back then, Al Davis used to make all his coaches ex-Raider greats or whatever. Like Biletnikoff was the wide receiver coach. Willie Brown was the cornerback coach. And this is how he ran his system. He did have more experience as far as like coaching, but he had no head coaching ability. But, got a spark. This wasn't a bad team as far as like, they had some good players on it. So they got a spark and they started winning. And they won. And he played a couple years and he had a pretty good record. In some ways, that is what Mark Davis thinks in the back of his mind when he thinks about Antonio Pierce. But then again, there was Joe Bugle. It was the same situation. The coaches, the players wanted him, and they lobbied for him, and they just threw him right under the bus. And I guarantee they threw these players today, threw Antonio Pierce under the bus. And Antonio Pierce would have thrown Telesco under the bus and said, like, the only reason I did not succeed is because Telesco didn't get me my quarterback. Period. That's it. Now, you can disagree with that just because you don't see anyone else saying that. But you can check. Most of the time when I say something, it comes true. I have to take some guesses. I have no inside information. But I just know from the culture of the Raiders, they do not do well with disciplinarians. And they totally embraced Art Shell because he was complete opposite. But then again, that eventually fizzled out. The Raiders bar was like, still pretty high at the time. But, they got rid of him. And they went through some bad coaches. And then they brought him back because Al Davis regretted it. And you got to understand the psychology with Mark Davis. I guarantee he has some of that in the back of his mind. Regret. That's why he brought back John Gruden. They're actually tied 2-2. They've been brought back twice. They've coached the Raiders twice. No other no other coach has done that in the Raiders. So the tie might get broken. But I would not expect, after the McDaniels thing, where the players specifically complained about the disciplinarian type stuff, that they will not tolerate. They just won't do it. One of them went crazy. Chandler Jones went crazy because of McDaniels. So they're not going to bring someone in like that. They're a mess. I actually think there's another there's another aspect that maybe they're looking to tank next year too, because the quarterback's coming out a better, and they might clean house and try to get draft capital, things like that. Don't spend a lot in free agency. Just ruin their roster. Remember, Gruden had no trouble going, 4-12 after he stripped the roster. So all that has to happen is that. I mean, they just use the current starting quarterbacks. They should have no trouble, having one of the worst records. But then again, this year there were so many bad teams. And in the final stretch, last 2 or 3 weeks, the top position flipped around quite a bit. It looked like, people are predicting all the Raiders are going to eventually get up to that top. And they did. Then they went right back down. Because you never know how teams are going to evolve over a season with the injuries. And you take one player away, like the Saints. The Saints at the beginning of the year looked like they were going to be like the best team in football. But you take Derek Carr away, you take their weapons away, and go downhill. But there has to be some sort of a splash. But I just don't understand this Ben Johnson love affair. It makes no sense. It's fool's gold. You're equating all the success of the Lions to him. I don't think that's possible. It's a team sport, and there's so many other factors going on. I think Ben Johnson does not distinguish himself as much as John Gruden did. And Mark Davis should listen to my words and my insults, but take them with a grain of salt. And I think I know what I'm talking about. John Gruden is the exceptional unproven candidate back in 1998. I would not compare him to Ben Johnson, or Ben Johnson to him. He's the one you really need to go after. But then again, he would clash with your Brady. Your Brady, who wants to sell you cat juggling and all the other things that go with the jerk. And if you buy Brady, Brady's a liar. He's a cheater. He doesn't care. He's playing a game. Midlife crisis. Hurts. Well, OJ's dead. OJ's dead. Marcus Allen probably knows who killed those two people, as Al Davis once suggested. And the tie goes to the runner, and John Gruden is the one running from the NFL. He wants to get back in the NFL. And I say, there's your avenue, but you gotta drop Brady. All he's doing is playing you. Mark Davis is getting played like a lot of billionaires and rich people I've noticed are thick as bricks. They attract the attention of con men, and Tom Brady is a con man. Nothing more. His success is based on the NFL's association with the military, where they generated fake patriotism via elevating this team called the Patriots to the Super Bowl every year to promote all the garbage wars that are going on in the world, that continue to go on in the world. And all it takes is these referees. And guess what? The Raiders do not get that benefit. And you are expecting that by bringing Brady in. You're being screwed. You need a rebel. You need John Gruden. Dumb Raider fans, they'll never understand this. They don't watch other games probably, and the rose-colored glasses. But the Patriot game, apropos, is it's fake. It's all smoke and mirrors. And the Raiders have failed doing this before. Got to get rid of Brady. Get rid of him. Bring back Gruden.